Yo, Ben, welcome, brother.
Hey Nick, great to see you.
You too, brother. I deeply appreciate you hopping on with us today. I would love for us to first share how we met. I know you're down in Costa Rica. We're at this amazing place called Florestral, and you were on a certain journey down there. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I had been down for Envision Festival, so a week of expansive music and dancing and lots of energy. And then I spent a week up in Diamante Valley and some of that at Florestral. And that was much more of an inner slow journey in the rainforest. And yeah, beautiful, beautiful inner journey and lots of grounding and sinking in and expansion during that time.
Yeah, and just for those who don't know, Florestral is a community down in Costa Rica where Elijah, who is also on this call, um, owns some land, who are building out a community centered around plant medicine, inward journeying, and doing different retreats and different activations in that realm. Were you part of any of the retreats down there when I met you?
I did. I had just come off of a 2 day deep dive, all night ceremonies, and they were beautiful, and yeah, some of the best ceremonies I've ever done.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to talk to you. Having discovering entrepreneurs coming into their full power, embracing ceremony and all these ancient practices, and integrating that into their journey is something that we are very excited about. Elijah's also doing his plant medicine assistant program at Floristral. Forgive me if I'm misrepresenting that, but you shared with us that this company that you're building actually came from a vision you had during one of these ceremonies. I was wondering if you might be open to sharing that with us and some of the context of which this vision came out of.
Yeah. So 4 years ago, I was in Guatemala, and I went to a ayahuasca ceremony, and then did San Pedro the next day, which is another plant medicine. And I went on this long walk in the forest by myself, and I meditated under this big, like, grandmother tree of the forest, this beautiful tree that was just covered with life and all sorts of plants and mushrooms and stuff growing off this tree, a whole ecosystem in itself. And meditated there, and I got this a transmission of the story of life evolving on Earth. So life evolving from single cells to fill out the ocean and come on land and go deep in the ocean and come up into the air and even drifting all the way up into the atmosphere, and that it was all happening with intelligence and purpose, and that the earth wanted to fill out every niche, but then also wanted to expand, and really that's the ultimate goal for the earth, is to continue beyond whenever the sun will go out and to ripple life across the galaxy. And so I saw the earth grew humans and gave us all the food we need, the medicines to survive, the plant medicines to raise our consciousness, and really that everything's unfolding exactly how it's supposed to, and that we're part of nature, and nature wants to expand and reproduce. And just like a dandelion's purpose is to grow up and create the seeds and let the seeds blow away in the wind, that's like the biggest thing the earth wants to do, is to continue life and continue consciousness across the galaxy and across the universe. Um, and so, yeah, through that, it became very clear that day, oh, I'm here to create the seeds of Earth, to send the seeds to the stars. And my background had all been in space, and I've worked on hundreds of satellites that have gone to space and built big telescopes to find other planets that could one day have life. So this all just like clicked into place, and was like, this is why I'm here. Is I'm everything's led to this moment, and I'm here to create the seeds and send the seeds to the stars. And so started a company, LifeShip, and that's our mission, is to both do this to preserve Earth and save a copy of Earth, and save a copy of all of Earth's precious species so that future generations have a copy. But then also create the seeds to send to the stars. And then Part of the way we've done this is with a product for people to add their DNA and their life story and their purpose into these seed capsules that we send to space. And we sent 2 to space last year. We're on a rocket to the moon really soon, and working on a bunch more space missions.
Yeah, and just meeting you and hearing about this mission is literally expanded my scope of what's even possible on Earth. Taking something of Earth, like creating these partnerships, and you have them with all the different space agencies, and like literally sending human genome into space. And I think that's just the coolest thing I've heard of happening in a while, which is why I wanted to talk to you. And with this mission of sending ourselves to space, I would just love to know, how do you feel like this reinforces our understanding as human beings of legacy, immortality, and really the human existence journey as we go into other planets and into the realms of space?
Yeah, there's a part of us seeing ourselves as part of humanity and humanity as part of Earth, and what is humanity's legacy on Earth, and what is humanity's legacy in the universe, and what will Earth's legacy be in the universe. And there's a couple of paths. Like, either we could be here for a blip of time in the universe and then disappear. Like, the Earth could be here for a blip of time, and a billion years from now the sun get too hot and we become like Mars and can't sustain life here anymore. Or we could have the legacy of, oh, humanity's the one who rippled life across the galaxy, and that this all started back on a planet Earth, and now there's life all over the place. And so, yeah, in the grand scheme, it's whether humanity has a lasting legacy and impact on the universe. I know that each one of us is here with a purpose, and that the universe is unfolding as it's supposed to, and we're part of nature, and each one of us has has our purpose and our story and who we are. And so part of what I want to do with LifeShip is it helps people put intention into their life and their story and their legacy. And it can be a moment, kind of like a plant medicine ceremony is, where you step back and you're like, okay, who am I and what's going on here, and what's meant to come through. And similar, want this to be okay, what intention do you want to send out there into the universe of who you are and what you want to be remembered for. And that can be a ceremony, that can be a impactful event in your life, when then you look up to the stars the rest of your life and you've sent out there your biggest intentions for your life and your dreams and your purpose. So yeah, I feel like it ties that together on a big purpose in the universe down to a purpose of an individual.
Beautiful. And right now, correct me if I'm wrong, you're taking people's human DNA, the genomes, collecting that into this very small capsule, and putting that and sending it into space. What other things have you experimented with sending through those capsules? And also, what other elements would you be interested in sending out into space in the future? You talked about intention. We kicked around the idea of like a modern Noah's Ark. What other things would, if you had several of these capsules, could send them out today? What are some other things you'd be sending out to the cosmos?
Yeah, these are meant to represent all different species from Earth. And the ones we've sent up there so far, we've put 500 different species. We've focused initially on plants because plants are a big part of our food supply, and you kind of need plants before animals. And yeah, we've done a good solid collection of all different important food crops from around the world, and then also plants that are beautiful flowers, and then also sacred plant medicines, and some of the plants that have been relied on by the indigenous and have been viewed as some of the most sacred plants. And so we've put some of those in the capsule, and then we have a data archive with a cultural record of humanity, and a whole library of photos, and a whole collection of art in it, and music, and So really, it's meant to be a cultural record, a seed bank collection of Earth, and then we're working on other parts there. We're working on adding some food, some like chocolate, some wine, some other like tastes of humanity, and then even sounds of animals. And so really wanted to increasingly grow as a record.
In the event, let's say hypothetically, an alien species did stumble upon these artifacts, what do you feel like would be, the intention behind it? Like, suppose like humanity gets wiped out, God forbid, and these artifacts are stumbled upon. Like, what's the next steps, or like how do you see that playing out in that scenario?
Totally. Well, if we imagine the other scenario where we find a capsule from an alien civilization that sends it here, and it has all their DNA and all their stories and all their wisdom, that would be, probably the greatest find in human history. And so um, I don't know if we'd bring aliens back to life, or but um, but there would, yeah, it would both be a record of a civilization, but then by including the DNA of everything, there is the potential that it could be used to birth a new world. And so that's like, there's some nuances here. So part of the vision is, okay, we're sending out a record, but a record is only so useful. It's like, okay, something might find it, or in a doomsday situation, we go and get it and we recover something, which uh, the bigger vision here is that in the future, maybe a small group of humans get on a starship and go to the stars, and only a few humans would go, and maybe they would be like cryogenically frozen for the 100-year journey to get to another star system. But they would bring with them the blueprint of a million humans and all different plants and animals, and in case they find a new planet, and they're there to populate a new world. And that's likely how it'll happen in the future. It exists in many sci-fi books, and that's, and movies, and that's a bit further out. But the concept is that we're saving that bank to then go populate new worlds in the future, and that, we're no no like promises yet, but that's the vision of what we want to do for people. Is like, okay, you're coming on this journey, and maybe you'll get born again on a new world someday.
Wow. Yeah. In one thing you touched on, that I feel is very important, and one thing I love about your mission is space accessibility. There's been a lot of hate thrown around the internet for these billionaires who fly to space and have these like space companies as their toy projects, is perceived by some. And so I would love for you to just speak more about, the importance of human and plants and accessibility to space.
Totally. Yeah, I see this as a first real mass market consumer community based way for people to be part of space, and it's kind of like a space agency for Earth, or a space agency for humanity. It's the people's space movement, and increasingly the vision is that this is a democratized, decentralized um, movement that lives on beyond me and lives on beyond all of us. Is that it's like we're creating a foundation that its purpose is to ripple life across the galaxy, and that is meant to be decentralized power, and is meant to be a democratized movement where the people who are a part of it, or whoever's part of it, then have a voice in how it works. And so, yeah, this is that's the vision. It's a community movement to back up Earth and spread life to the stars, and somewhat like a Noah's Ark mission, and um, somewhat like a seed bank, but really making it about humanity, about all of us, about inclusion, about all the species, and really being a movement for life.
Yeah, it feels like in this point in our history, we need a unifying force. I feel like there's a couple different scenarios that could happen. Either one, we all come together as one species, and we all do this mission together in some capacity, or the other one is we need a common enemy. Having that moment, God, not so God forbid, because I think it will happen soon, but we won't go into that, where the aliens do touch down and present themselves. And so, you know, I feel as though LifeShip could be that force that gets us in touch with our humanity, not as an American, as Russian, as Ukrainian, as Chinese, but together as one species. So I would love to speak more about your vision for the decentralized human hub that you describe, and where you feel like this is going.
Totally. It's a unifying mission. It's about all of humanity. It's about all of life. It's about Earth. It's about life in the universe. It really is gets us to yeah, step back or step out and realize that we're part of life in the universe, and we're part of what the universe is doing. And that, I think we could all agree that there's some bugs in our human operating system of how we're relating and dividing up ourselves. And this can be a pure mission of just about, okay, here's the blueprint of who we are, and here's the inspirational stories we want to send out there, and here's what we want to be at our best. And it can be a way for all those different people to have a voice in that mission.
Yeah. So one of the things that gets brought up for me when we're talking about space is we always hear stories about the space race, right? That happened a couple of decades ago, and where the world was all competing to get to the moon and get into space. And it was such a beautiful movement. And, you know, I guess my question is, what do you feel like could bring back that excitement, and what part of this do you feel like is an iteration of that kind of yearning and that um, human desire to go into space?
We're at a very exciting time for space, and uh, yeah, the space race and getting people to the moon was an exciting time, and that really was a huge push for the United States, for humanity. There was a lot that happened in space, and then no one went back to the moon for 50 years. And now with what SpaceX has done and the new rockets that are becoming available, just exponentially more powerful and reusable. So they're more like airplane rides, and they're just fundamentally going to change access to space and allow settlements to be built on the moon, allow people to be living on Mars. And in the coming decade, I feel will that's what everyone's aiming for, is to have permanent presence on the moon in the coming decade, and then Mars several years after that. And so it really is becoming a lot is starting to happen, and a lot of companies are going to be built around doing all the different things you need in space, because everything we do here on Earth you need in space pretty much. And then also it's becoming much more accessible, and there's been a lot of people that are now normal people, not trained astronauts, flying up into the edge of space, and over time to do a long distance airplane flight. To If you go from to the other side of the world, it's actually space is only 300 kilometers up, so it's actually much more fuel efficient to fly to space and fly through zero atmosphere, slowing you down, and land on the other side of the world than it is to fly in atmosphere and push through the wind for 20 hours of flying or whatever. So over the coming decade, those things will start to become more and more available, where it's just like, oh, you're flying to Thailand, you just go on a rocket and you go to space, and you land on the other side, and that becomes the affordable like way that makes sense to do. Just because before, rockets were crazy expensive because they were built with super old technology, and they couldn't afford to take risks on them, and they were one-time use things. But now, as they start to become more like airplanes and fly all the time, then the risk goes away from all the testing and all the advances in technology, and they become the more affordable way to do things. And so yeah, in the coming bits, I feel like we'll have, it's like the railroads are open, and we'll have regular flights going to the moon, and we'll have flights going up to space. And space is really becoming accessible. And but that still is not, there still hasn't been like a movement where all these people that want to be part of space exploration have an easy way to do it and a way to participate in it. And so that's part of what I see LifeShip bringing, is that it is a way for anyone to watch a rocket launch and know a piece of them is on it, and send a piece of them up to the International Space Station, up to the moon. We want to go to Mars. And so it's a way for people to be part of what's happening in space and to go along for the ride, even if they're not the one going on the 6-month journey to Mars, that people can be part of this. And so part of it also is that we want to send our capsules, and we're working on being on all sorts of other interesting missions. So there's companies building gas stations in space. There's companies building asteroid mining to go out to asteroids, and we want to send our tiny capsules with the DNA of all sorts of people out to these different places. Both because our mission is to create a distributed, backed up copy of Earth across the solar system and beyond. So it's part of our mission to be on all these different things. But our community, we want to include them on the coolest missions that are part of this rapidly developing space ecosystem, and help tell the story of what all is happening by a participatory way that people are a part of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful how modular you've created this. It's like you have this small cap, because correct me if I'm wrong, but all the DNA and all the information that you're collecting, how small is it when it actually goes on the spacecraft to be sent out into space?
So our current capsule is the size of a coin, and we can fit 1 million people inside that coin. And then there's data as well. So it's people's DNA, and then the data, and then all different species DNA, because DNA is tiny, information is tiny, and our model is to put a whole bunch of these all around. And some of these we might integrate into a monument or some specific type of object that we put in different places around space to make it like a monument. But yeah, at the core, like the seed of what we're creating is just the size of a coin, really.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's so many different ideas hovering around this, and so many different ways to leverage the same systems that you've created. I want to do something. So we have a venture studio. We love ideating with different creators. I would just love to like throw out some ideas and just kind of like kick them around, and just share with you some things that popped up as I did deep dive and research into your company yesterday. So one of the things, you actually touched on one of them, which is like a personal space memorial, which is you kind of already doing this in a way. One of the things that we look very closely at is honoring those who have passed. And I find it fascinating, how much land we use in the process of memorializing our dead. We take up all this land and the space, and I find it fascinating. If you just imagine for a second, 1,000, 1 million graves, of having this process of memorializing in real life versus the possibility of memorializing 1 million people on the size of a coin on a capsule. Is that something you ever considered from an angle of, using it to honor the dead, or possibly even reserving space on a future mission for your DNA once you have passed?
Totally. We have people that have passed away, that their family members have passed away and have added their DNA onto this. And for those that don't have access to the DNA, we also have put ashes on these as well. And that it's a way to honor and memorialize, and it's part of it. Our core mission is the DNA, because that actually has a use in the future, but the ashes are a memorial, and they're a sentimental part. And then the whole experience that we're creating is meant to save your forever legacy. And we're working on an AI experience that interviews you about your story and your life and your purpose. And it's good. I learned a lot talking to this AI chatbot about myself, and it wrote up like a beautiful biography of my life and my dreams and my purpose. And I was like, "Whoa! I've never written something like that," and that was beautiful. And so there is a whole experience that people do in personal growth workshops and exercises and retreats, of essentially writing your obituary and writing the story of your life. And so we're using an AI to help interview you to then write your story, and that's a piece of this as well. And so that's applicable to people, to kids, to like people of all ages, and for people to write the story of someone who passed away. And so it does bridge this, and it does open it up beyond just a tombstone and a memorial. And it is like okay, let's memorialize ourselves while we're living.
Yeah, I love that deep reflection of working with these chatbots. I mean, the things these things can do now is absolutely astounding. So it's wild how much potential there is to impact every corner of our universe. And it's really great to hear that you are also actively embracing this technology. Another idea we had was some of these agreements that we hope to put in place, or possibly even as a peace effort. Like actually having maybe one of these capsules go up as a mix of Ukrainian and Russian DNA. You get everybody who's signing the petition to end the war, mix that into a capsule, and actually send that up into space, and maybe even partner with a Russian company to do that. I mean, I think this could also have some implications in terms of not only our own stories, but also the agreements we make as a species, in a way to expand that on into our contracts into space.
Totally. Like when the Apollo astronauts went to the moon, they left a plaque there that says, I think it says, "We come in peace for all mankind," or something like that. And so, yeah, space can be this. Okay, what are we saying together? What message are we sending out there? And uh, totally, we could send a capsule with all sorts of Russian stories and all sorts of Ukrainian stories, and a collaborative note between the two of how they want to be remembered, and how they want their cultures represented in it, and what the wishes there are um, for how we live together.
Yeah, it's a beautiful palette in terms of encapsulating information that goes into the stars, because it doesn't belong to anybody. And obviously, there's like some, in terms of like space ownership, there's a lot of negotiation that's going to happen around that. But for the time being, it is open ground, and bringing that to a decentralized, collectively owned model. And it's kind of, I feel like that's a bit of what you're doing, is really beautiful. When we were at Floor Straw, you also mentioned the possibility of turning this into a DAO. And for those who don't know, a decentralized autonomous organization, and having some different elements to it. Do you care to share, kind of what you're feeling into around that, and how that can also enhance your mission?
Yes. So, like what I was mentioning before around this being a democratized, decentralized movement for humanity and movement for life, um, a DAO is a new type of tool that enables that, and it codifies how an organization runs, and it gives a decentralized power to the members of it, and then it sets out the rules and the operations of how the organization is run based on how the people are voting and having a say. And so the big vision of this is that we're we're creating a billion-year organization that may not just be the send life to another place, but then when the life grows there, we've maybe codified how then it then goes to spread again. And so really it's meant to be this long range organization that lives beyond a single person or a single like group of people. And it's more like, how do we set this out there and set this free, and set the way that life moves outward. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and her and I recently watched the movie Contact, which is about uh, it's about SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And in the movie, the main character, played by Jodie Foster, we receive a message from extraterrestrials. It tells us how to build a machine, and she goes in the machine and gets transported to another place. And they don't give her any information to like come back and definitively say they told me the answer to the universe is this, and so I can prove that I went there. And it all happens like in beyond time, like in an instant. So it's not like she disappeared and came back. And so when she's there, she asks some questions, and she says, yeah, she says, is there anything that you can tell me, or is there anything? And they essentially say, this is just how we've contacted and made contact with other species for billions of years. This is how it was done before we existed. This is the aliens. This is how it continues to be done. So in that movie, the concept was that, okay, some aliens like figured out how to reach out and send a message. They figured out the best kind of message to send as to another civilization. They taught them how to make contact and have an interaction, but they didn't give them anything more. They kind of like left them on their own, but made that initial bit of contact. And the line there of this is just how it's been done before we were here, and this is how it's been done. That's the vision of this, and that's the vision of what a DAO or whatever like evolves beyond that could be. Is that okay? We're creating the vision and the system and the organization and the way to start the process of rippling life out from Earth, um, and that it's likely we're the first or we're the only intelligent ones in our galaxy. Like that's I don't know for sure, but like there's possibility of other intelligent life. I'm sure there's other intelligent life in the universe, but um, we might be the ones that start to ripple life across our galaxy. And maybe there's others out there, maybe not, but like the vision is that we're creating that billion-year organization that then starts that process.
Yeah, and one of the things I think about around contact, it's like, what are the ethics of how we interact with the species? We're thinking of it from a civilization has been around for millions of years. Like, what are the ethics of how they would be interacting with us? You know, is it okay to just touch down and contaminate the community? Not even in terms of like bacteria, but I mean, throwing the world for a big curveball. If you have the ability and you've risen to that point in your trajectory of consciousness and of whatever you need to past that great barrier and can make contact, do you? And if so, it's like, how do we approach that as a species? I mean, is this something that you're exploring with your DAO or have any strong opinions on?
Totally. There's there's some that think like, oh, we don't want to contaminate anything. We don't want to disturb anything. And I feel like they're like, yes, we don't want to just send bacteria to Mars and mess up all the science we can do and all the learnings we can do. And we don't want to send something to a place that has life and it contaminates it and destroys that. But I do feel like there is an importance to continuing life and spreading life, and that the risk of us just being insular and not sending anything out is bigger than the risk of us contaminating something out there. And so I do feel that there is part of this is just opening the conversation and putting it out there as like hey, we think this is a grand mission for humanity, and this is one of our possible reasons for being here. One of the biggest contributions we can have in the universe is to continue life, and that there is a responsible way of doing that, and to begin that conversation of how we do that, and how we do that as a species, as a planet, and continue life in the universe.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, if there was a point, I do think that expanding life beyond Earth is it's a great mission. I feel like everyone can get behind. One of the things that I've noticed, and actually I have some data to back this up, is the rise of the starseed tag on TikTok. So as of like a week ago, there's actually 1 billion plus views on TikToks that mention the word starseed and people speaking to how they came from the stars. and their identification is non-human entities. I would love to just get your thoughts on this trend and, what you feel like this says about our connection to the stars.
Starseed is a word that I continually play with. Are we using that in our brand or not? And because it does feel like it is the core representation of what we're doing, is we're like saving your essence, your code, and like a bit of your consciousness to send to the stars and to create your star seed in the future. And so it does deeply resonate, the concept there. And I think star seed is something that, it also, there's a scientific term that kind of makes sense there. Like, okay, it's about seeding life in the stars, and star seeds have this spiritual connection of people's connection to themselves being part of another civilization around at another star system at some point. And I've had experiences that make me feel like, okay, part of me came from somewhere else. And I don't have a full grasp of all of that, but like, yeah, I do feel like that's kind of what we're doing, is that um, either we're potentially connected in consciousness to uh, other civilizations and other conscious entities out there, and they're with us and they're guiding us, and that time and space are an illusion, and that really is just like the intelligence of the universe. And so other intelligences that have come before and have come after or will come after, like, are all there guiding the unfolding of the universe. And so in that, I feel like our consciousness and every moment of our existence is connected and is unfolding as it's supposed to. And yeah, I feel like we're being guided by everything that's ever happened or ever will happen in the universe. And that part of that guiding is that of life continuing beyond Earth and of life rippling out. And what's come to me in deep journeys is that, okay, the Earth has this destiny of rippling life out across, and that someday, like, something will look back and be like, whoa, it all started back on that blue and green white planet, like, and now it's like all over the place, and all this has come from back in that early Earth, and it's some like story that gets told of Earth and humanity that then gets carried on.
Yeah, even thinking about the concept of a starseed, um, and what you are effectively doing, creating these small seeds of DNA that you can send to different places in the universe. And the goal is to expand life into it. I can imagine a scenario very far in the future where we actually identify different planets of which can potentially contain human life, and actually send down capsules of the DNA in order to seed that planet with that divine creation, with our genome, with a mix of the genome of the plants, of the medicines, of the people, in order to effectively create life on that planet. Is that something that you see this as the building blocks to that sort of future? Is that something that you feel like would be on your billion-year roadmap with LifeShip?
It is. It's either sending the seeds out or sending the ships with the banks in them that then are used to grow new populations. But yeah, the scalable big vision is that it's seeds that crash into somewhere, grow stuff, and hopefully it grows into intelligence, and then it also can spread and reproduce, um, and yeah, it be a living organism that reproduces and continues to spread its life. And it's possible that's how we got here. It's possible that we're just part of this. Um, and I think I'm like 50% that life originated here, and 50% that some sort of spores came here and grew us. But yeah, it's possible that that's just what we're doing, is we're part of this conscious intelligent entity that like started with a little spore and crashed into Earth and knew what it was growing to, and has grown to intelligent life that then can create the seeds to spread them again. And we're just part of that whole system.
both options are equally possible, and I feel like equally terrifying. Right, from my perspective, maybe terrifying is not the right word, but on one hand it's either, we came from an external place, they equipped us with these plant medicines and this different mix of stuff that turned us into what we are, or we are the first, right? Like, this is genuinely the first time in the history of the universe where the right mix of computers and meat computers being human beings have come together to have the ability to even spread this across the universe. Um, you know, I feel like the first situation is much more likely where we're not the first to have this idea, but taking that, encapsulating it into a billion year mission, I really, it's very inspiring what you're doing. And also as an engineer, as a software engineer, I'm very inspired by your history as a hardware engineer. You've worked on some of the coolest projects in space, and also encapsulating genome engineering and like all the things that come around that, as well as artificial intelligence into what you're doing. Um, you know, I would love for you to speak to some of the other cool stuff in space, and also some of your advice for other spiritually motivated creatives as to, some of the motivations for getting into space work.
Yeah, one thing I want to touch on first is that we've talked a lot about this like billion year and sci-fi and rippling life and impacting life on other worlds, but a huge, we met in the Costa Rican rainforest, and that is like, I am deeply, deeply, deeply passionate about Earth and all the species here and caring for Earth. And so a big part of this mission is to do this out there thing about life in the universe to preserve Earth today as well. And so some ways we're doing that, or we will do that, are around like tokens, just limited tokens for the elephants and the giraffes and all the species on it, and you can sponsor the species, and that a big part of that goes to preserving ecosystems today. And so we're core to the mission is to do like much more net benefit for Earth than the resources we use to spread the seeds to the stars. And so that's like a weaving of, okay, this being a natural care for Earth while spreading life in the universe.
Just on that subject as well, I believe that guardianship around the Earth and taking care of our spaceship, if you will, is such an important topic. And I love that you're also leaning into that. Do you have a roadmap in place of some of the different things you want to touch on? I think these are all great ideas. And,
Yeah.
identifying like how that progression happens, I feel like would be interesting to so many different people, our network, and I'm sure in yours too.
So as far as roadmap, we're working on being on. We're going to the moon. We're working on going to deep space and past an asteroid. We're working on getting to Mars, and it's really when these commercial landers go there. As far as like the DNA bank, we're starting by just putting your DNA on the moon, and then we'll add DNA sequencing and help you learn a bit about yourself in that process, and be the digital bank of yourself that then you can pass on to future generations as well. The personal growth will increasingly be AI that interviews you, tells you your story, but then also workshops or courses you could do with real teachers that then help you, maybe presence you, give you a bit of setting space and intention, and then get you to leave a voice memo about your life purpose, or get you to talk about your childhood and your dreams, or talk about your family, or talk about the Earth, or um, so increasingly we want the experience to be one of personal growth and intention, and helping you explore who you are and why you're here and what your place in the cosmos is. Yeah, and there's a bunch of other aspects that this touches on as we go further, of both in genomics and personal legacy and story, but then also in the kind of stuff we can do in space.
I love the angle of that integrated self reflection, like actually seeing like your life as a ship that's populated with all these different components of your story and your legacy. And I feel like there's a lot of beauty of taking all those elements and like spinning it down to something so small that can be part of the collective story of humanity that's been sent to these places. It's really beautiful.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And then I'm working with a yoga teacher who's she's creating a full moon experience for a big group of people to put their intention in this during the yoga ceremony and set their full moon intentions, and their full moon intentions go to the moon. And so, yeah, I think there's also ways that we can tie and deepen a person's connection with the moon and with setting intentions in the process.
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to sign up for future missions. Like I
Mhm.
feel like there's if you say that, like I'm not sure if this is actually the number, but if the capacity for the number of objects for that mission is like 1 million units of data, right? Having the ability to encapsulate either it's my intention or potentially my manifestation or anything that is relevant to me, whether it's, you know, my grandfather's story or obituary, and be able to sign up for future missions. I feel like that's something that I personally be very interested in doing. I don't know if you've thought about that or you know what that kind of looks like, but if you have like the schedule for the next 3 years and be able to like
Mhm.
schedule in different missions, I think that would be a very cool way to position the product and position um, our ability to tap into it at the right point in time based on our trajectory with our own personal growth.
Exactly. Yeah, we're working on being on rockets every couple of months, and you'll be able to watch the rocket launch and continue to add to your story, and it be an engaging thing where it's like, oh, you keep going to different places. And we're still working out whether that'll be you pay by the mission, or there's a subscription that you sign up for, or a membership you are in this, or lifetime membership or lifetimes
Multi
membership.
lifetime.
Yeah.
How many lifetimes you want of support? And then I've never seen a 500-year subscription before. Yeah, I mean, one of the things you brought up earlier that again warped my perception of even like what's possible in this grander scheme, because they're talking about, you know, a billion-year roadmap here, is the possibility of retrieval of the first pod and taken to a new place, like
Mhm.
being the first to actually be on the moon, and then like for future missions that being retrieved and then sent to another place and like actually doing a lap around the stars just blows my mind.
Yeah, that's and we haven't promised that yet, but that's part of the whole concept of, okay, my DNA is in a capsule on the moon for the future. That just opens up 1,000 million different stories you could write of that. And like one of the possibilities is, okay, future humans go and pick it up and take it to the stars, and you get born again on a new world. And um, and then that happens again, and you get born again on all different worlds. And so, yeah, that is one of the possibilities, is that it's a capsule on the moon for future humans to take with them and populate new worlds.
And as a spiritual creator and like talking from like one guy to the next who's got all this realm of possibility with what you're already doing, how do you filter and figure out how to prioritize how to lead your company and lead this roadmap and lead this down into the next phase with all this different potential?
It's I have limited bandwidth and limited things I can work on, and pretty small team right now. And so I'm both focusing on like we've sold 3,000 of these, so we've shown there's a product. I'm working both on revenue opportunities and partnerships, and because I really just need to get the company sustainable and underway so it can grow, and we can invest more in marketing and more in the brand and more in space missions and more in the product experience. But really to get that initial focus of, okay, how do I get it to the point where it's sustainable and going and can expand and grow, um, and balancing between building out the experience and building out the community, but then a lot of effort on a fundraising round, a lot of effort on initial partnerships that bring in revenue, some effort on marketing, but I've kind of paused a lot of our like paid ads and other advertising right now. And yeah, and then the whole community development and DAO will come along, and it feels like all these things are. We're doing a test run with someone building out the AI to interview people, and it's all kind of flowing and happening and evolving simultaneous in a way. And I do need to be very um, have a strategy of like, okay, these are the actual things I'm focusing on, and these are the areas that I'm moving forward on.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's just so much massive potential in what you do, and as somebody who's I've been CTO of companies in the SaaS space, like digitally, as well as in the D2C space with physical products, and I know that in the beginning you went the D2C route, which is sending a physical kit to people in the mail, which is awesome to put the DNA and send back. But I love that you're foraying into a digital offering too, right? Something that doesn't have the overhead and the shipping and all the complexity of it. So to have the ability for a person to contribute a message in a way that and maybe have the D2C offers an upsell at the end, I feel like would be a great way to achieve some level of scale and really get this thing out there. If and and even position it from a place of not scarcity but realistic capacity, right? Saying, hey, there's going to be 1 million messages that go on this next ship that leaves in October, right? And just saying, this is the maximum amount. Maybe just call it 1,000, right? And having them fill that up, and then like having releases based on capacity for people to add in additional messages. I feel like there's a lot of potential in that sort of setup in terms of managing your inventory, but inventory being the messages that are sent encapsulated to the pods to the different missions.
Totally, there is a digital product will be the either freemium or low cost like way that millions or a billion people get on this at some point. Like, one can imagine sending a record of humanity to the stars that has a billion people represented in it. And yeah, that would probably be a free thing. And then there would be other products where people can add to it and create on top of it.
Yeah, and if accessibility, I mean, I've listened to a bunch of your talks and like obviously read your website. If accessibility is the key mission, figuring out an easy way that everybody can, metaphorically hop onto the spaceship. I feel like in a freemium world would be, really could just help all the different products take off. Um, and yeah, I feel like there's so much potential getting creative with this thing.
There is. There's a lot that can flow out of it. It's exciting. I continue to get enough like winks from the universe that like, okay, this is a big thing. And yeah, I know where it's headed.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about at Floristral, I think is another interesting point that a lot of spiritual creators encounter is you mentioned the universe teasing you with something different during one of your experiences, and I would just love for you to speak to, how did you know that different path wasn't for you? Because I remember you mentioned you're going to stay on this current path, even though it's put in front of you. How do you
Mhm.
feel into whether or not that's right for you?
Yeah, so when I've gone into these plant medicine ceremonies, sometimes I think I've learned to like I've had an ask or a curiosity of like what takes my company to the next level or what takes this, like what's meant to happen here. And oftentimes the messages are much more like deeper about your way of being or your way of showing up or your family or something that's like deeper core mm, learning or lesson about being a human. And oftentimes that then is what's impacting what's holding you back in your company or what's opening up for the next stage of it. And one of the things that happened was this whole all night ceremony was up until up through sunrise. Late in the night on the second night, I was and all my lessons so far that night had been about um, yeah, my life and who I am and how I'm showing up and beautiful deep lessons. And then I was sitting by the fire meditating, and I felt like my mind going, but it felt directed towards like, oh, maybe it's time to like let this go, and maybe there's something in this space that you're supposed to be doing, or maybe you want to just like live in Costa Rica and like focus on building a house and like connecting with the land and kind of let that go. And like, and I was like, part of me, like the part of me where my mind went is like, is she showing me that I'm time to walk away from this and start to go in that direction? And then like after a few of these different routes she took me on, like there was a part that just like came in a warrior stance of like, no, I know what my path is and I know what I'm doing. And then she was kind of like, yes, 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 you got the lesson. Like the lesson was like, you're on the path, you're doing this. This is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Like I just threw some little teasers there to just like, to just get you to like realign and just like get that alignment there. And yeah. And so some lessons come in those sort of directions.
Yeah, one of the things I've been playing with the medicine, the messages, is that these plants and these spirits have bias. They have a mission that's also being enacted. So, just something. I'm not saying this is what happened to you, but I've just been thinking about when we interact with these different spirits and these plants, it's like, what sort of bias are they projecting? The fact that you're sitting with the medicine of flora straw in ceremony, and there happens to be plots of land available, and that you, as a spiritual creator who knows hardware and space and rockets and all this cool shit, like, is there a certain bias to the plant to have that desire for you to build on that land? Right. And it's just something that I've been playing around with, even as I'm intending to buy a plot of land at Flora Straw. It's like in going into, I'll be sitting with that medicine, what sort of biases play into these experiences that we have, and identifying what we learned in this warrior's journey that I'm doing here in Costa Rica is a sphinx. A sphinx comes in the form of a temptation to deviate us from our path, right? Identifying those sphinxes and understanding, what those transition points that are potentially blocking us from either going deeper or creating a deliberate desire put in front of us that will deviate us away from what we're really, really seeking. And it sounds like you encountered one of those very explicitly in that medicine experience.
I like that. Yeah, I'm writing down Sphinx.
Yeah.
Temptations that want to deviate you from your path. Yeah, yeah,
And you shared with me as well that you had another message to also move home to a different location and kind of change up your lifestyle back in California. Do you want to share with us how you transformed your life after this ceremony and what's been different for you
yeah.
since coming back to the United States?
Yeah, so I had lived in the city in San Francisco for a while, and then I moved down to San Diego and was living in the suburbs outside of San Diego. And I have an 8-year-old daughter, and her mom lives down here now, so that's really grounded me a bit to this area. And but I wasn't feeling the suburbs, and I even though I had like cool park near me, I missed the city, but then I also wanted to be on land and in nature. And this opportunity came up, this place I had been hanging out at, more in the country in San Diego, and on gorgeous land and in community and like epic land that you can just walk for hours, right connecting on the property. Um, and the opportunity was there, and I had pretty much said, yes, I'll take this house that just opened up. But it still hadn't fully integrated, because part of me was like, I need to be in the city, and I need to be in the energy, and I need to be like meeting people all the time to build this company, because I'm building a fast growing tech company, and like I need to be in that energy. And this whole trip to Costa Rica and in the medicine ceremony as well, it just kept showing me, go live on land. That's where you're meant to create this from, and that's where it's the insights come through in nature and on land. And this very much is a mission for earth and for life. And I can always do my trips to the city, but for now, living, yeah, I came back from Costa Rica and immediately moved into this 2-bedroom little cottage cabin on epic land, and there's sheep and goat, or there's sheep and chickens, and I don't know, like lots of life around. It's pretty cool.
And do you feel like that's been a positive transformation for you?
It has. I feel like ever since I left San Francisco 2 years ago, I haven't felt like I've been home. And I travel a lot, so I am probably half nomadic. And then I come back here and I've rented different places for 3 months or 6 months and tried different areas. But ever since I moved here, I feel like I've landed and I feel like I'm home. And all the other places I've been, I haven't unpacked my storage unit and unpacked art and hung art on the walls. And there's just, I love the nomadic journey, and I love the freedom that has. And there's also um, different phases of life, and being able to hang some art on the walls and have a place that feels home and feels all yours has definitely been a, a remembering of that's something I was searching for.
I love that you followed that intuition and made this change. It's just like, because I feel like a lot of people consider doing it or they get the message to make that move. So to witness someone actually make that transition and feeling like they landed in a good spot is amazing to witness.
Yep. Yep. It feels good.
Great. All right, Ben, where can people find you on the internet?
So our website is lifeship.com, and people can send their DNA for $99 to the moon. You can send your pet's DNA, you can send ashes, you can send photos. And then increasingly we'll have more offerings, but that's the way to initially get involved. You can also put your email address in there, and you get a free experience where you can add a bit of your story, and we send that to the moon for free. So lifeship.com. We're not as active as I'd like to be on social, but we're building it. We're starting to get more stuff going, both at LifeShip on Instagram, and I'm Ben LifeShip on Instagram, and then also LifeShips on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and same with me, Ben Haldeman.
Awesome. You can also go look up at the moon because your product you're going to be on there soon. So if
Yeah,
you want to find some connection.
yeah. Go connect with life in the universe, and you're part of the whole thing.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Ben, thank you so much for joining us today, brother. You're such an inspiration, and thank you so much for sharing your energy and with everything you're doing. I can't wait to see where this heads a billion years from now. Thank you so much.
Same, Nick. Really loved our conversation, and glad the universe brought us together.